Negative emotions will always do this and it will keep you going around in circles. Driven Mofos, welcome back to another episode of The Underestimated Entrepreneur. Negative emotions. We've all heard about these things. Now, personally, I don't like using the label negative emotions because even though emotions can be negative or positive, they're not really negative and positive. Negative has to do with charged particles. Positive has to do with charged particles. So we're talking about principles of physics or electronics. Now, if we're talking about that in the brain, that's a different story. When we're talking about emotions, they're normally empowering or disempowering. So I won't say that emotions tend to be negative, but they're empowering or disempowering. But what I like is in this context, I'm going to say that negative emotions narrow options. Okay, I'll say that again. Negative emotions narrow options. It just rolls off the tongue a lot easier. But what does that mean? Well, when we're disempowered, when we're in a disempowered state, and we have what psychologists and people in the mental health space call negative emotions, when people have negative emotions, it narrows their options. Now, this can happen for multiple different reasons. So let's think about this. From a neuroscience perspective, with our brain, when we're in a disempowered state, we're running through our emotions. And our emotions are part of a more primitive part of the brain, which means a part of the brain that developed a longer time ago than the more advanced parts of the brain. Now, the more advanced part of the brain, known as the prefrontal cortex, the executive center, the neocortex, which is the outer crust of the brain. Essentially, the brain's developed itself in layers over evolution, if you believe in evolutionary theory. So you essentially have the most primitive responses in the brain in the middle, right? In the deep part of the brain stem. But then after that, we then develop this emotional center, which tends to be around the middle of the brain. Then we have the most logical thinking part of the brain on the outer part, or the prefrontal cortex, which is the front part of the brain. So we develop our brain in these layers. Now, when we're emotional, we drop back into the middle response. Now, the most primitive response is survival. It means that we react. So the reactions that we have tend to be that we react when something triggers us to either be food, which means it's pleasurable, or painful, which is a life threat. That's how the most primitive animals respond. Then as we go above, we've learned through evolution that if we surround ourselves with groups of similar animals, that we can survive more effectively. So the emotional center is all about fitting in. It's about empathy. It's about compassion. It's about understanding each other from the perspective of other people's emotions and what they feel and how they respond and how they react. So then we start worrying about what other people think. We start responding in certain ways. The most logical part of the brain, which is the most evolved part of the brain, we can then govern those responses. So I can be around people that are emotional and not get emotional. Okay, now it's not because I'm a psychopath, maybe a little bit, okay, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, it's not so much because I'm a psychopath, it's just because I understand what's going on so I can help them through it. Because I use more of my logic and my intelligence about human behavior to help navigate them through. Imagine if I had clients who come in and they're going through a relationship breakup and they're here on my couch in my office crying, and then I start getting emotional and I start crying because they're crying. Now you've got two people who are stuck in a disempowered state. How do you help someone? You can't. You've got to be more logical. That's that more evolved part of the brain. So now when we're talking about negative emotions narrow options, what we're saying is that in a disempowered state, the options that you perceive to solve problems significantly narrows. So let's say you're stuck, you've had a really shitty day at work, you're frustrated, you get home from work, the kids at home are doing crazy shit. Your options of how you're going to respond become very narrow. And normally it's going to be some form of reaction, which is a primitive response, or you're going to get all emotional, which again is a primitive response as well, not a logical response. So if we can get ourselves into more logical states where we can think through things effectively, where we can understand what other people are going through, and then we can work through it with them, then we win. So what you want to do is you want to stop yourself from getting into those disempowered or negative emotional states if you want to solve problems. Great problem solvers don't get invested in the emotion, they get invested in the outcome. Okay, I'll say that again. High-level thinkers don't get involved in the emotion. They get involved in the outcome. So they know what they're trying to achieve. They know the outcome that they want, and then they help lead themselves and other people to the solutions to help get that outcome. Versus most of our society get caught in the emotion. When they're caught in the emotion, their options narrow, which means it's harder to problem solve, it's harder to figure stuff out, and you'll get stuck. And then sometimes if you're in a real survival response, you'll just be stuck ruminating over and over and over again. This is where you think about a problem over and over and over and over and over, and you can't solve it. And you just get stuck. So when you see someone who was pissed off 20 years ago because something happened and they're still pissed off, that's because their emotional triggers keep narrowing their focus and they can't see a solution. The same as if you're a business owner and you're stressed out at staff all the time, it's going to be very hard to problem solve and to become an effective manager, an effective leader to help guide them out of those situations. This is why the more a business owner does personal development work, does mindset work, the more they can manage themselves. The more they can manage themselves in their own mindset, the more they can lead other people to solutions and build people around them. As a business owner myself, my goal is to build myself so much so that I can build my team. I build my team every day through our culture guide, through our systems, through our processes. I'm always training them. I'm developing them. When they have problems, they come to me and I help them with it. Even if they're personal problems, I still help my team through their personal problems because I need them to grow. The more they grow, the more the company grows. The more the company grows, the more I have to keep growing. That is an intelligent business owner. And then there's not many of them out there, believe me. In the millions of business owners that are out there in Australia right now, there's not many of them that will grow and invest in themselves to the level where they are so growth driven that the people around them naturally have to be growth driven as well, right? Most business owners I meet, especially trade-based businesses, it is easy to win in the trade-based industry because most business owners don't grow. They just do what everybody else does. They just follow the path. But to the ones who do grow, a lot of you are probably listening to this right now. Like the reason why you're listening to this podcast is because you're growth driven. The question is, are you doing enough? Are you doing enough personal growth? Do you understand a lot of these principles that I'm teaching? If not, you need to join something like my Business Growth Odyssey program, or maybe do some one-on-one coaching or reach out or whatever it is if you want to keep growing, because you're going to be the biggest bottleneck in the business always. And like I said, negative emotions create narrow options. You want to have your options wide open so you can see solutions really easy, navigate through problems fast, problem solve quick, train and develop your team on it. If they get emotional, you lead them out of it so that they can see options. And then from there, the business grows super quick. And it grows quick and doesn't fall apart. When a business grows quick and starts falling apart, it's normally because the business owner isn't growing fast enough and they're focusing on the wrong thing. Normally, when a business grows quick, they're focusing on cash flow. Then eventually cash flow means that they've got to keep hiring staff. They keep hiring staff. Then eventually cash flow dries up. They've got a lot of staff, but they're not making a lot of money. And then there's a lot of chaos because there's a lot of staff to manage and they just can't control it. And then all of a sudden the business blows itself to bits. So that's why business owners have to grow quick. But parents should be doing the same thing as well. Like you don't want your kids to outgrow you. It means that your kids are fucking smarter than you are. Now, for most parents, their kids are smarter than them because these days kids are going to school learning about emotional intelligence, learning about a whole bunch of different things that parents didn't grow up learning about. Self-growth to a lot of younger generation now is important. Self-growth to most baby boomers, Gen X's and Gen Y's is like non-existent, but that's going to get them stuck. You know, I was talking to a bunch of business owners yesterday and I said this. I said, if you're not understanding how to use social media effectively and you're not putting enough time and energy into social media, please understand that millennials and all of the younger generations that are coming through now, Gen Zs, they spend all their time on their phones. They can type fast. They can find things fast online. They are essentially going to come over and dominate your industries because they're just better. They're more effective. And yes, every generation, they tend to not grind as much, right? When we go back to baby boomers, they worked really, really hard. And that was just normal. Now, a lot of people don't really want to work, but it's because they can use things like technology to not have to work as hard. They work smarter. They work more effectively. Productivity is important to them, but they do it through other means. It's just different. It's just a different generation. But they're going to come through using social media. Once they hit your industry, you're doing one post a month, which is so boring on your Facebook page because your business is boring. They're coming through doing 3 to 4 posts a day, and then you're wondering why you're getting spanked in marketing. That's why, because it's just a different generation. So what my point is they're going to be probably better leaders and better managers as well, because they're learning a lot about human intelligence. about how to stay empowered. They're learning a lot about psychology, about mental health. They're learning all this stuff. Now, there's benefits and there's drawbacks because they're also learning a lot of bullshit as well. Like if you've got, anytime you feel a negative emotion, it's a mental health problem. That's going to make them really weak. But the thing that's going to make them strong and succeed if they can put their mindset in the right place is that they're going to realize that their mindset is one of the most important faculties that they have if they want to achieve a great life. And if they learn how to use it, they become a weapon and they'll just destroy everybody else in whatever industry that they go into. Anyway, Driven Mofos, I hope you've had a great day, or I hope you're having a great day. Keep kicking ass. If you haven't rated and reviewed this podcast, please do so. And I look forward to joining me back here once again for another episode of The Underestimated Entrepreneur. Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.